Apparently I'm live. I didn't even really mean to do that because I don't know what I'm doing. What's up, Sunday Z-Pack fam? I don't even know if the sound is working. You guys got to tell me. Here, let me log in here. My videos. Consciousness rounds. It's got the wrong thumbnail too. That's awesome. Let's do this. Oh, there I am. It's actually working. Hi, guys. Thanks for coming in. Welcome to all the new Super PAC supporters that support the show. It means a lot because it helps us do all this stuff. It's Sunday, and oh, hey, there I am. It works. Okay, hold on. I can get your comments here. Oh, look at that. Josette and Tony and Ashley, our supporters, are here. Sarah Monica, master of puppets, I'm pulling your strings, is here. The Lord Finest is here, walking with one foot in. Adrian, wow. All right. Maggie G is here. She's a supporter. If you guys haven't signed up to be a member of the Super PAC, it's like $4.99 a month at the lowest tier. You need to do it just because it's dope. All right. Anyways, enough of that nonsense. Enough of me shilling for myself. Here's what I want to talk about today. Consciousness, meditation. So there is a new group of subscribers to this channel that are subscribing not for the medical stuff as much because that's not their interest, but because they watched my interview with Donald Hoffman, professor of cognitive science at UC Irvine and consciousness researcher, and he was sitting right across here, and they said, oh, I want to know more about this, trying to figure out the nature of reality as it applies also to the nature of our own mind and conscious experience. Now, I've said this before, this is one of my deepest interests. And, there are a lot of people who have no interest in this at all. And I totally get it. I also don't get it at all, but I totally get it. However, for people who are interested in, hey, what is the nature of reality, of consciousness, and who've asked the question, why is it that I'm aware of anything at all? That is the strangest thing in the universe. In other words, how is it that I can have the experience of the taste of coffee? You know what I realized? I forgot to hit record on the device back there. That's how screwed up my mind is. Hang on. Come over here. I forget to hit record every single time I go live myself here. I've never gotten it right. And I ascribe it to the fact that I don't have Tom and Logan to run the thing, but I also ascribe it to the fact that there's probably a deep unconscious block that I don't want any record of this ever existing, even though it will live on the interwebs forever. So when I record on that, that means now, folks on Facebook, when I re-upload the non-live version of this to you, you can actually watch it. So I'll recap. We're talking about consciousness, meditation, and this aspect of the show that has been relatively underrepresented. And I want to really focus it on the YouTube side because that's where a lot of the interest is. When I put Hoffman's interview on Facebook, it got 5,000 views, which is abysmal for Facebook. Facebook, you just put something up and it gets like 30,000 views. On YouTube, it got over 100,000 views and like 3,000 comments or something crazy. So clearly the interest in that space of philosophy, theory of mind, these kind of things is on YouTube. So that's why I'm doing it here. Let's look at some comments. Whoa, Brandalynn Toki just joined the Super PAC. Awesome. Shannon Angelo is a supporter. My Michelle is a supporter. Good morning to you. She's getting alerts from YouTube, which is good. DWD hashtag is here from Temple Terrace, Florida. All right. Let's start this thing. Delicious. So what I just experienced when I drank that coffee was a liquidy, slightly bitter, but very complex and difficult to describe experience of the taste of coffee. I had the tactile sense of the warm, water swashing around and the act of swallowing. That experience is something that convinces me, in other words, that I had that experience, is the only real evidence I have that there's anything real existing in the world at all, and that I'm actually a thing. So the fact that I have experience is incontrovertible proof to me that I exist. And in fact, it's the only thing in the universe, as far as a matter of experience, the only thing in the universe that cannot be an illusion. The fact that I am having experience, that there's something it's like to be me. And my experience is also applicable to you, because there is something that it's like to be you. And this aspect of reality, that we have experience. So Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. That's bullshit. That's actually not how we should look at this. Thoughts are simply another experience. I am, therefore I am. Popeye was closer to the truth, right? The idea that we have any experience at all proves to us anyways, because we're the only people who can have that experience, our internal subjective experience, proves to us that we are existing, that we're conscious, that we're aware. And this is one of the craziest aspects of reality, that we are aware of something. And let me answer a few comments here, and then we'll get back to this. So first of all, Shannon Angelo found the new supporter-only emojis. They're little cartoon versions of my head. So I highly recommend you try those out. Oops, I hear my furnace going on. Let me turn it off so that it doesn't interrupt I'm going to freeze my family out, but so it doesn't interrupt our sound. There we go. Because I'm in my garage and the furnace is right there. That's right. Consciousness. That's what we're talking about. DWD says there was a CBC documentary a few years back on organ donation called Dead Enough, where some of these questions were asked relative to when is consciousness actually gone and ethical to proceed. Okay, so the idea of levels of consciousness is an interesting one. And so first of all, what is consciousness? Consciousness is simply the ability to be aware, to have a subjective experience of any kind. And so we have to ask ourselves, what could be conscious? Are cats conscious? Are we conscious? We know we are, because we're having an experience. And there's a strain of thought called solipsism, which says the only thing that I can really prove is that I exist. And the world could well be a figment of my imagination, and you may not exist except in my mind. And I'm not a solipsist. I think that's crazy, because that's crazy, listening to me, that I can't be the only thing that exists, because you're having an experience. So the idea of brain death and consciousness, that rabbit hole goes very, very deep, because there are theories too in general anesthesia, for example, that it may be that we're not actually unconscious during the time we're under anesthesia. It might be that we're having an experience, whether in a dreamlike state or whether in reality, actually experiencing pain and the experience of the surgery, but we just are unable to form memories, which means when we wake up, it's as if we were never awake during that period because we weren't aware. That's terrifying, because it means that in that moment that you were having the surgery, you were suffering excruciating horrors, but none of it is coalesced into memory or experience in terms of your sense of self, because you can't recall it. Now, to take that one level deeper, and this is, again, these rounds are more, let's have a conversation about the philosophy of consciousness. So it's going to be all over the place. But, what up, Glenn Cario Freeman? If you really look at reality, the only thing that actually exists ever is the present moment. And I mean this in the strictest possible way. So we exist only now. The only thing that has ever existed is the now moment, this now moment, this now moment, this now moment. That's all that has ever existed. So when you go through anesthesia and you're not forming memories, you are still existing. Let's say you're aware, okay? You're still existing in the eternal now, having experience in the now moment. But the now moment that has gone by, the instant fleeting moment that's gone by, that we currently, in our mind structure, are able to hold in a kind of working memory that is presented to our mind in the next now moment. So 3 seconds ago, I can still bring that back into this current now moment because of the function of my mind that allows memory. Memory is not the past. Memory is a reprojection of something that was a previous now moment into the current now moment. The only thing you ever experience is happening now, and that includes memory. So think about this. There is no past. It doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is right now, and right now, and right now. So conscious awareness during anesthesia without memory. So play with this idea for a second. Maybe anesthesia agents are simply destroying our ability to form short-term and long-term memory. And so we experience now moments without any ability to tie them into the narrative of ourself or into a future now moment, into the now, so that we can consolidate it as something that has ever happened to us, which is a construct that our mind creates in the now moment. So anesthesia awareness, now people who have had awake experiences during anesthesia and come back to report them as horrors, there's the theory that they don't respond to the anesthetic agent correctly, or the anesthesia was too light, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they're paralyzed, but they're not unconscious, so they can't say anything, they can't move, et cetera. They report memories of this, which means that that agent has failed to prevent, to create amnesia. And they experienced it as a part of their story and their narrative and their life, and it causes trauma and PTSD and all those things. But let's say that, let's just play with this idea. If you can't form the memories, you can't reify those memories into the experience of yourself, which is a construct of the mind in this now moment. And it's as if it never happened. But you might well have been experiencing it at the moment. And that is a great illustration of what the now moment is really like. It is the experience that happens right then, but without memory, without consolidation, it doesn't become reified as part of who you are, because the next now moment doesn't contain it. And all there is now. And so now you start to think about, who are you as a person, as a self? If we're creatures that are aware and we actually exist only in the now moment, how do we have any sense of continuity, of a sense of self, of a sense of history, that our parents exist, that we were born, that we had a childhood, that we went to school? How does any of that exist? It all exists now, as a series of imagined and remembered images and thoughts and sensations and ideas and concepts. So who we are in this moment is entirely dependent on our mind's projections of our memories, the stories we tell ourselves, these concepts that have been conditioned into us through previous now moments. And this creates the sense of self in every single new moment. You are being reinvented in every single new moment. And so the question then, let's read some comments before. And again, this is just me philosophizing. Welcome to the Super PAC, Joy, Happiness. What a beautiful name. I love that on a Sunday. Elixify. I just spat on my microphone, Elixify. Welcome to the Super PAC, and bless you. I like that phrase, bless you. It sounds very religious, even though I'm not religious, for being a part of this, just like Brandalynn Toki, new Super PAC members. I can't tell if this is true or dream, Gman064. Think about a dream, guys. Just for a second, let's take a divergent idea here. A dream is a construction of our mind. Everybody can pretty much agree, mostly, that dreams are our mind's projection. Okay, now we're going to come back to that. Let that sink in. You can imagine an entire world that feels real, sometimes more real than waking reality. And it's entirely a projection in the now moment of your mind. So let's come back. And this relates to medicine very, very deeply, which we're going to talk about. Okay. So we're back in the now. Actually, hold on. John Crane, interesting experiment. Take someone's brain out of their body and put in a vat. And what happens? So I have strong thoughts on this, John, that we should definitely come back to. But I think the brain is not causal. In other words, neurons, neuronal networks, they are not causal. They are what consciousness looks like to a human mind system. It looks like a brain. That's the icon we use. And if you watch Hoffman's interview, you'll know what I'm talking about. So taking a brain out and putting it in a vat is going to be interesting, because I don't think that you're going to cause anything there. You might see something interesting. And then the question is, what is the body? What is the body? Oh man, there's so much here. We're going to have to do like a whole series on this. So let's just talk about stuff. Okay. So Joy Happiness, thanks for the $2. This is, she or he says, this is why I really love consciousness psychology. Exactly. So, okay, let's get back to the now. So the human mind constructs its sense of self, this idea that I am a body in space and time that has a history and presumably a future. It constructs that in every single moment, new, based on things that have happened in previous now moments that have conditioned it. And this is really fascinating if you think about it, that all that exists is now, that we're recreating our sense of self in every single now. How can we possibly have a sense of continuity? Well, in a way, the way I see this is it's a kind of a flow of cause and effect. So the previous now moment conditions a future now moment. And some of this conditioning has to do with conscious intention that's set. So in other words, if we have a certain momentum of, okay, I intend to do X, Y, or Z, the next now moment, the next experience, it's like beads on a string, like a film strip, just the now moments are flying by. And the projector, the light shining through the projector is right here. And our experience is this single moment. But the previous frame kind of sets up the next frame in a way. And so there's a sense of feeling of continuity. But all that actually exists is the awareness. In other words, the light coming through the projector lens on a screen, and the screen itself of our experience is experience itself. In other words, it's awareness. It's self-lit, and it is modulating its form. So I see a coffee on the screen, but really the screen itself is made of the very thing that the light is made of. It's made of light. It's made of awareness itself. So the knowing of the coffee cup in this very single mind moment is identical to the coffee cup itself. That's, if as a matter of experience, me knowing this coffee cup, and this idea is called non-duality, that there aren't two things. There isn't a perceiver and the perceived. There is only the act of perceiving, knowing, consciousness, awareness. And that's what this cup is made of in this moment. And when you look at it on your pixel screen, right, you can drill down, oh, these are pixels, but your experience is you're seeing an image of a cup in front of my face, and that's all that's happening, is the act of seeing. And this is difficult to describe, and I'm not good at it, but this is the fundamental basis of non-dual sort of teachings, which is there's really only one thing. The universe is just, as a matter of experience, it's just conscious awareness. And even the objects of consciousness are just made of the same stuff. It's made of awareness. Now that sounds very spooky and weird unless you've been reading and practicing and understanding this philosophy and meditating and these kind of things, because there are meditations that will make this feel palpably true. Let's read some comments. Joy with another $2. Thank you for the super chat. How do you think this also plays into intuition? Okay. And then I want to read more comments because these are great comments. Okay, so how do you think this also plays into intuition? Intuition, as far as I think about it, is a process. Now remember, most of our mind, our mind system, which is a series of sub-minds that are unconscious to us, that are doing processing and feeding up some kind of signal into our conscious awareness. And a lot of times it doesn't feed up signal, it just operates in the background. My thinking is that, and Hoffman and others would agree, these sub-minds, our mind is like a fractal pattern. We have this level of awareness that we're consciously aware of, but then underneath it are these sub-minds, our auditory submind, our visual submind, our tactile submind, our narrative submind that constructs the sense of self like beads on a string every now moment, using all this stuff and integrating it into something called a binding moment of consciousness. Fed back up, this is the story. I'm in my garage, looking at a camera, reading comments, I'm ZDoggMD. Okay, that's a binding moment of narrative consciousness, and it's fed up by these unconscious, to us, subminds. But each of those subminds is conscious in itself and is made up of further subminds in a fractal pattern all the way down. What is intuition? Intuition is our subminds operating in the background, each of them conscious in themselves and exchanging information in their own locus of consciousness, but made up of their own subminds, creating inputs from the bottom up, and then the top level of consciousness feeding back information through awareness into these subminds to condition them and change their responses. Intuition is that dynamic interplay between our conscious awareness and our unconscious, to us, subminds. And intuition is when a submind feeds up, hey, you know what? We've been through this before. That guy is trouble. And then you manifest that in consciousness as a feeling of unease or something doesn't feel right. I don't like this. My spider sense is tingling. That's intuition as far as I'm concerned. And you can listen to intuition by being mindful of it, by going, oh, this feeling that I'm getting probably comes from somewhere. Let me explore it. And that's, I think, more intuitive people use that very powerfully, right, and creatively and to their advantage. And then some people ignore their intuitions and override them from a top-down override. And you can do that too. The other metaphor we've used is elephant and rider, right? So the elephant is our unconscious mind, emotional, intuitive, quick, and heuristic. So it just uses these shortcuts to decide, hey, you know, we've been through this before. This is my intuition on this. And then the rider is the conscious override on top that says, okay, I'm going to listen to that. Or, wait, that probably doesn't apply here. I should make a more logical choice. And that takes more energy, that kind of override. Let's see. How many fractals between submind 1 and 2? Gman064. That's a great question. Could be infinite. We don't know, right? Miguel Poncho, 45, says, the brain is the organizing principle, consciousness being everywhere it appears to be concentrated in an energy pattern we call neurology, maybe. That's an interesting thought. The way I see it is this, and this is crazy, so don't believe me on this, but this is just how I think I've come to think about the brain itself as an organ. There are people who think it's a receiver of consciousness from some external source. There are people, the majority of scientists believe that it is the cause of consciousness. In other words, material, atoms, neurons, and so on exist and are causative of consciousness. That's dumb. And I'm going to tell you why. We can't even come close to explaining how that can happen. And I've talked about this, again, watch Don Hoffman's interview. This is called the hard problem of consciousness. We cannot even come close to deciding even a proposed mechanism, and there are several, that makes any sense in terms of explaining how the taste of chocolate consistently emerges from a pattern of neuronal electrical activations. Now, it could be that we're not smart enough. It could be that there's something really physically baffling about it, like an extra dimension or something. The collapse of quantum microtubule states, like these things have all been proposed. Integrated information theory by Tononi and others. But the truth is, it still makes no sense. Now, I'm willing to be proven wrong on this as a scientist. Show me a theorem that actually predictably can show me how neurons exert the taste of chocolate. Now, we can go in reverse. We can go, the taste of chocolate looks like this on an fMRI scanner. The taste of chocolate lights up these parts of the brain. The taste of chocolate is correlated with certain ion gate activations in neuronal networks. Sure. Absolutely. Don't deny it at all, and can be very helpful. Not only that, but you can take strong magnets and activate parts of the brain and have conscious experiences arise or be removed, like draining color from a hemisphere by applying a very strong magnet. And Hoffman talked about this as well. That still says nothing about causation of conscious experience, awareness. It simply says there's correlation. So the question is, what is the brain? So here's a theory I have, and it's crazy. If Hoffman is correct and it's consciousness all the way up and down, that's reality. Not just Hoffman, but mystics, Buddhists, non-dual philosophers, monists, they say that everything is just one thing, awareness, consciousness, whatever that is, right? And that's not a thing. That's why it's hard to describe, because you can't use words to describe something that does not have shape, form, time, and space. It's outside of those things. It is the potential for knowing. It is knowing itself, which is very difficult to wrap the brain around. If everything is consciousness interacting with itself, and Hoffman proposes mathematical explanations for how this could be, these conscious agents all the way up and down, summing up to more complex conscious agents and breaking down to as small as a 1-bit conscious agent that can simply feel one thing, yes or no, perceive, decide, and act. PDA loops that create math called Markovian kernels that are probability spaces that then describe how they interact with their world and with other conscious agents. And from that, Hoffman hopes to spin up the theories of quantum mechanics, general relativity, and every conscious experience you can have. If this is true, and that we see the world in our species-specific user interface, when we look at the nested set of nearly infinite conscious agents that make up our own mind, that looks to us, the experience our level of consciousness has of that is a brain. And if you dig in deeper, it's neurons. And if you dig in deeper, it's glial support cells. And if you dig in deeper, it's neural networks and lobes of the brain, and frontal lobe and occipital lobe, and nerves and electrical voltages and calcium channels and GABA and serotonin and dopamine. That's what it looks like to our user interface. But those things in themselves are not causal of experience or of consciousness, because they are not real. They're icons. Just like you wouldn't say your trash icon on your desktop, on your laptop, is a real thing. It's an icon that means it points to a deeper truth, but it is not the truth in itself. You can manipulate it, just like you can manipulate brains. You can use magnets to change currents that change experience. So you can manipulate your icons, but the fundamental underlying truth of the computer underneath is very, very different. It's all conscious agents interacting with themselves. And that manipulation is some interface with the world of conscious agents. So that's the way I think about it. Let's read some comments. Let me see here. What do we got? Oh, these are some interesting comments. I'm not sure I can comment on some of them. Now is the core philosophy of Zen Buddhism. Everything is one. Very true on the atomic level, G-Man 064. So many Buddhist schools of thought and Hindu schools of thought are this sort of Atman, this one consciousness. And again, it's because in the old days, people could spend time just sitting around contemplating consciousness through introspection called meditation. You can have peak mystical experiences. Also, psychedelics can do this, where you can actually experience this. Now, there's a guy, okay, let me see here where we're at. Joy, happiness. Is this why children appear more intuitive at times over adults? Based on what I know as a therapist and what your theory is, it makes sense. So children are unconditioned when they're born. This is actually, so, okay, there's a guy, there's a whole channel on YouTube that I recently discovered called actualized.org. And there's a bald dude with a beard who runs this channel. And I went into his blog and stuff, and he's definitely crazy, but his name is Leo Gura. He's insane, but he's also right. And there was a video he did about about relating to this joy, happiness, about what we are, like the deepest teachings of all perennial philosophies, all ancient, whether it's religious thought, mystical thought, or non-dual scientific thought. And he does this video that's like an hour, basically saying, this is the truth you don't want to hear, but this is the truth. And it's this. You are not anything other than infinite, unlimited, undivided consciousness imagining worlds and experiences for eternity. That's who you are. You have been here now for eternity, imagining experiences and worlds. And people go, wait, what? Like, no. I'm a separate self. I'm made of stuff. I have a body. I have a past. I was born as a child. I've had experience. And he says that is something you imagine in this present moment. And that sounds totally retarded. It sounds crazy, right? Until you actually imagine what that means. So if you are unlimited consciousness, awareness, and you're outside of time and space, and you have always existed. In fact, causality is simply something you imagine. It just is. Consciousness is. And it's unlimited and undivided, and there's nothing outside of it. In fact, even the concept of outside is a human mind construct. As that, which he argues is what we are, fundamentally, that's what we are. You can imagine and create worlds in which beings exist that have pasts that they imagine, that are imagined, and the imagination being unlimited in potential can imagine beings that are unaware that they are imagining. Let me repeat that. As unlimited consciousness, you can imagine a division within yourself where you are a single human being with a past and a future that does not know it is infinite consciousness imagining itself. That is entirely reasonable for an unlimited, infinite awareness to do. And in that sense, every single human, every single entity on this planet is actually unlimited, undivided awareness imagining itself and imagining that it's forgotten what it actually is and thinking that it's in a body, it has a past, it has a future, and it's going to die one day. Let that sink in for a second. This is very hard to understand. And if that's true, truly true, and that's what we are, really, like, wow, right? Think of all the worlds and possibilities that unlimited, infinite awareness that you are is conjuring up that you currently, in your little manifestation of this imagining, is unaware of. Now, what Leo Gura says, and I believe him, is that higher states of broader awareness of this are possible, partially through meditation, partially through accidental peak mystical experiences, and partially through the use of psychedelics when done judiciously. So people who've done DMT report these experiences reliably. And they say they felt at that time more real than this level of reality, which, if you believe this model, we are consciousness imagining this. Because consciousness in itself is unformed. It has no shape, space, size, nothing. It's like clear nothingness. It's potential. So how do you create an actual experience? You have to differentiate that potential, like an embryonic stem cell turning into a body. And that's what consciousness does when it imagines a world like this. Let's read some comments. Amy says, I reject your reality and substitute my own. Fair enough. That is a fair response. Meditation is lucid dreaming, Miguel Pancho 45. So lucid dreaming is a form of meditation, actually. So training your mind to be aware during dreaming that you're dreaming and controlling the dream. So there are yogis who can actually meditate in their dreams actively, using a dream state as a meditation, which can be very powerful. Let's see. I need to learn how to imagine someone has already cleaned my house. That would be super helpful, Adrian Kausner. Here's something that's super helpful. So the meditation I did this morning is a Locke Kelly style of non-dual meditation. And so there's multiple kinds of meditation. And we should talk about this another time because now it's getting rambly. But here's the meditation I did this morning that put me in the mind state to come talk to you right now. The meditation is this. And this requires, first of all, that you've practiced, say, Vipassana meditation, which is focused concentration on your breathing and that sort of thing. I think it helps a lot to develop a concentration. But the idea is your eyes are open. You're sitting in a chair. You start by letting images come to you. Instead of the typical thing, when you look at something, doesn't it feel like you're going out to grab it? That's the nature of vision. It's kind of like a hand reaching out. Like when you're looking at my face right now, your eye, the sense of the experience of it is often of reaching out to the screen and pulling in this image. So this meditation is no, do nothing. Allow the image to come to you and experience it first directly, then broaden your peripheral vision. And again, I'm not doing this justice because I'm going through it quickly. Broaden your peripheral vision to be aware of things on the side of you. So in other words, now you have this open panoramic experience of seeing. As you do that, as you become still, expand that panorama to the space behind you. So become aware of the space behind you. Now this sounds weird, but when you actually do it, when you're in the mind state to do that, you can actually experience this empty space behind you in which sounds arise, in which there's a sense of spaciousness. And in that experience, the next step is, instead of projecting yourself out to experience the space around you, imagine that you are the space, and that space is aware in itself, because it's arising moment to moment in your experience. And experience is just awareness and its modulation. So at that point, you're not aware of this field of spacious awareness. You are aware from the field. Then direct that awareness at your body and at your thoughts and at your perceptions and at your experience. And you get this sense that the body is empty. It's not a thing. It's a set of sensations and energies and experiences arising in a field of open, undivided awareness. And in that moment, there's a sense of freedom, a sense of stillness, a sense of lack of suffering, because you're no longer identified as your body and your mind and your thoughts. You're no longer this separate, broken thing with a history and a future and regrets. You're now the open potential awareness in which everything arises in the now moment. And the trick is to do nothing, to relax into that experience, and to practice it. Locke Kelly calls it small glimpses many times a day until it becomes second nature. And that's my current meditative practice. Let's read some comments. Have you read Alan Watts's The Book on the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are? John Crane. I haven't, but I know Alan Watts is woke on this stuff. And I'm going to figure this out from first principles from his title. And Leo Gura says this in this video about, the highest teaching. This imagined thing that we are, right? In other words, a set of thoughts, perceptions, emotions, working memory that gives us a history and a sense of self, conditioned patterns, traumas, suffering, these things we identify with as us. They developed and stabilized over a very long series of now moments, which we call time, billions of years of evolution, to survive as a thing. Meaning, remember I said each now moment leads to the next now moment, leads to the next now moment. This is evolution in its purest sense. And now moments that are most adapted to continuing, to conditioning the next now moment to continue its pattern, are the ones that are the most successful. So imagine this. You are infinite undivided awareness. You spin up a bunch of worlds in your infinite undivided awareness, and you let them go, and they evolve. It's imagination evolving. And the most successful memes, the most successful patterns of thought, the most successful vibrations in this sort of idea of infinite awareness are the ones that beget future mind moments that are most in line with the previous mind moment. Moment, now. We, as humans, are incredibly successful patterns of conditioning. Thought, perception, actions, ways of identifying, creating a sense of self, works really well in the world that is spun up here. So evolutionarily, we're quite successful as a meme, as an idea, as a pattern of consciousness. What happens when you show this pattern of consciousness the truth about what it really is? You show this set of thoughts, feelings, perceptions, mind moments that has this imagined history, this imagined future, a family, a mother, a father, children, a spouse, lovers, friends. And you show this pattern what it really is, which is empty, undivided potentiality and awareness, and that everything that it thinks it is imagined in this now moment and reified by imagined memories and all this other stuff. How is that going to be received by this very successful system of mind? Not well. And in fact, in meditative circles, this phenomenon of starting to wake up, where you start to see what you really are, can lead to a phenomenon called the long, dark night of the soul, where you realize what you are, and your entire worldview starts to destabilize. Everything that you thought you were starts to destabilize. And the vast majority of people will be like Cypher in the Matrix and say, give me the blue pill back. I want to go back. This is not what I want. This is terrifying. And to be honest, For many people, that is a rational response to the highest truth you can learn. But there are a subfraction of people, and I don't count myself in this because I haven't gotten nearly to that point, right? I am very woke to my unwokeness. There are a subfraction of a subfraction of a subfraction of people who continue falling through the long, dark night of the soul into the deepest awareness that everything is consciousness itself and is transient in the now moment, and there's nothing to grasp onto, and your infinite potential. And they keep falling, they keep falling, they keep falling until they realize, wow, when you're falling against no relative substrate, you're just falling in empty space. That's the same as standing still. And that's what infinite, undivided, spaceless, timeless, eternal awareness is. And those people we call mystics. We call them Jesus or Buddha, or name your prophet of choice, Zoroaster. It doesn't matter. And that's my thinking on that. So let's read some comments. Erica Black says, none of us are really here. This is just a giant versions of The Sims. Yep. But yet what we really are is eternal, undying, undivided consciousness, which is reassuring. To me, anyways. Wolfpack, who's a supporter, says, weird thought. Every urban legend, nursery rhymes, tales, etc., had a small thing of truth. Your thoughts. Yeah. There's a kernel of truth in everything. Just like if you look at religious texts, you can strip away the dogma and the nonsense and the superstition and the parlance of their times, right? Like Old Testament is a 2,000 plus year old document. It worked at that time. And you find the underlying truth. And there's actually one of my favorites is from the New Testament. And remember, I'm not a religious person, right? I'm pretty damn secular. Jesus says to some unbelievers, I think, before they say, what about Abraham? What are you doing with Abraham? Something like that. And Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. Let me repeat that. Before Abraham was, I am. What Jesus is saying in that moment is the only thing that is eternal and true, and we're calling God, it is you, it is me, it is the now, the eternal, outside of space and time, undivided awareness. You can call it Holy Spirit, you can call it God, you can call it whatever you like. But before this idea of Abraham existed, I am. I am the now moment, eternal. Not I was, I am. That's the only thing that is real in the universe. I am, meaning this experience right now is all that has ever been. Leo Gura says in his video, he says, the truth of everything is that you have been here now for eternity, not a long time, forever, imagining worlds. That's what you are, which is, I think, spot on, but what the hell do I know? All right, let's see here. Eckhart Tolle, says Matt Jeffs, suffering until you no longer need it. Meditation until you no longer need it. Yeah, that's called transcendence. We identify with our suffering. Suffering is consciousness having forgot that it is imperturbable, undying, and uncolored awareness. So if you forget that, you're going to suffer because you can die. You can experience pain as a direct disruption of who you think you are. You can feel attachments that, when they're taken away, hurt. You can grasp for things you think will bring you happiness, and when you don't get them, you hurt. That's suffering. Pain is inevitable. That feeling of discomfort or unpleasantness or hurt, that's inevitable. But the suffering, the sense that I am dissolving or I am hurting or I am this suffering, that's optional. You can transcend that. Risa Doobie, Z is quoting the New Testament, Church of Z. Never thought I'd quote the New Testament as a secularist, but like the person said, there's truth in everything, all our stories. Blazing River, does consciousness transcend this earthly experience, or does consciousness originate here? Let's say it this way. Our earthly experience originates within consciousness. All that exists in this theory, all that exists and all that has ever existed, and it is uncaused because causality is a human construct, is consciousness. The earth, your mother, your toe, your sandwich are all modulations of undying, infinite awareness, basically entertaining itself through imagination. And by imagination, I mean creating experiences from nothing, because all there is experience, and all there is now. Even the concept of time is a construct of what we call our minds. And so time is an illusion. Space is an illusion, which is why quantum mechanics is so interesting. Quantum entanglement says two particles can be separated by hundreds of light years, thousands of light years, millions of light years, and still be entangled so that when you measure one, the properties of the other are determined instantly. Well, that violates the idea of no information being exchanged faster than the speed of light, unless you realize that there's no space, that is a construct we use. It's a data compression algorithm we use to survive within an infinite network of conscious agents that's so complicated that if we saw it for what it is, we wouldn't be able to butter our toast or drive to the store. So we spin up space and time as a fitness payoff measurement algorithm. Let's see here. Let's read some comments. Carrie Bennett, oh, I am not high enough for this conversation. Nobody is, Carrie. G-Man064, you're bringing the Zen into it. What is your face before your mother and father were born? This is a Zen koan. This is a Zen saying, which is, who are you? What's your original face? It is the face you had before your parents were born. And that sounds very weird, doesn't it? Until you really intuitively feel what that means. It means that you are undying, infinite knowing, awareness, consciousness. Words fail it. But that's what you are always now and have been before your parents were born. All that exists is right now, and everything in now is a modulation of now. So, Joy Happiness, what's your opinion on Jung? So Jung had a lot of truth. He's true but partial. We'll talk about that another time for sure. In my mind, what do I know? I'm just making this shit up. So this is what happens when I do non-dual meditation in the morning. Then I come and do a show like this on a Sunday where I'm just off the rails. But this is, let me be honest with you. This is all true. Where are we at? Blazing River, do we remember this experience when we leave? Do we retain our personal consciousness? Or is that just a concept since all is consciousness? Ooh, so much in this, so much in that sentence, Blazing River, to unpack. The idea of personal consciousness, the idea of memories and a soul is what you're asking. Do we have this sense of self when we die? And is that just concept? Now, and I have to be honest, nobody knows the answer to this, but I will tell you what I think based on, or no, let's do this. Let's make some theories. So is there such a thing as personal consciousness? What does that mean? And I've had to think about this a lot. And I think the way to think about, because look, let's be honest. Do you experience my thoughts and emotions and perceptions? No. Do I experience yours? No. Do I deny that you're having those? No. If I do, I'm a solipsist. It means I think I'm the only thing that exists and you're a figment of my imagination, and that is simply not true. So what is true? And the reason I say it's simply not true is you know that it's not true because you're having your own experience. So you are not a figment of my imagination alone. So what is personal consciousness? Because I can't access your consciousness. Think of it this way. You are infinite, formless, timeless, unbounded, limitless consciousness and potential. That's fundamentally what you are. As part of your limitless worlds and experiences that you spin up because you can, you spin up an entity, a part of you that is unable to access the other parts of you. In other words, you spin up a blazing river who has thoughts, feelings, emotions, experiences, a sense of self, but is unable to directly at that level of consciousness experience my thoughts, feelings, and emotions, or the global sense that he is one unlimited potential. Why would that not be possible for a limitless consciousness to do that and experience the world through those eyes? Imagine you are God, you're an unlimited consciousness, and you just decide, I'm going to spin up a limited version that feels love and has children and can suffer and can go to war. I mean, what a thing that would be. And effectively, that may be what's happening. So when we say, do we keep our memories and our sense of self when we die, and do we have another life and all of that? Who knows? But the broader question is, that only matters to the imaginary self that you think you are, that's having these experiences. It doesn't matter to the infinite, unbounded awareness that you actually are. That's unperturbable. That isn't colored by its experience, right? So in a way, it doesn't matter. But now let's reframe this, because there's another thing that Leo Gura talks about. And again, he's just one emissary of this idea of non-dual awareness. So, and he's weird, and I don't like him at all. I find him very off-putting. So to watch and to listen to, but he's right. That's the thing. So how can consciousness as a single entity, okay, if it's the only thing that exists, how can it have divisions? In other words, what is the space between the divisions? There is nothing that isn't consciousness, that is outside of consciousness. So if I have a consciousness and you have a consciousness, what's the interface between those guys? What's between us? Well, if nothing can exist outside of consciousness, there's no thing outside of that. There's nothing. If you can imagine it, then it's in consciousness. Then there can't be divisions between us, ultimately. They are imagined divisions. They are limitations of our level of awareness at this point. We are unaware consciously of that. Do high-dose psychedelics, meditate, become an adept meditator, and you will have unity experiences of consciousness where you are the all, infinite, unlimited awareness. People have this reliably. Religious mystics have this reliably, and they come and talk about it in religious terms. So it's really quite fascinating. Now, related to this is the idea that, okay, if we're infinite awareness, are we infinitely good or infinitely evil, or what's the idea there? Okay, first of all, good and evil are human concepts. Second of all, if you define good as like you're unable to harm things, you're unable to actually cause damage, you're unable to hurt others, you're unable to be hurt yourself. Well, an infinite, undivided, eternal consciousness that is not affected directly by its contents is the highest expression of good. Because it can't be hurt. Every experience it has is just experience in the now moment, and it's unperturbable. And if you think about, is it infinitely lovable or loving? What is love? Love is understanding and connection. And if it is the only thing that exists, it is infinitely understanding and connected to itself, which is all of reality. So that's infinite love. So just let that kind of percolate a bit. Katie Hodak, finally a medical question. How does this, and she's got a super chat going, how does this integrate with newer pain science? What a great question. So let's bring it to medicine now. In medicine, we try to reduce everything we do to manipulations of icons on our interface. In other words, we see a molecule, we think it's causative. We see a neuron or a cell, we think it somehow causes something. Instead of being an icon that we can manipulate, so that we can manipulate those icons and change conscious experience. We can change the experience of the body, we can change the experience of the mind by moving these icons to a point. For example, if you're using a Mac operating system, you can do certain things on the graphical user interface on the desktop. You can make documents, you can edit video, you can do certain things, but you can't program or change the underlying code that runs the computer, because you don't see the underlying code that runs the computer, because you are confused into thinking the computer is the desktop interface. In medicine, we are confused into thinking the brain is real as such. We're confused into thinking that pain can be reduced to receptors and modulation of neuronal impulses and physical processes that spin up pain. This is why I'm so fucking crazy about this, you guys. Like, this is, okay, let me be real for 1 second. I've spent most of my life doing medicine. 4 years at UCSF studying reductionist medicine, molecules and receptors and voltage gates and pharmaceuticals and all that. And that stuff works to a point, because you can move these icons on the interface to a point. And when you're in medical school, you are overwhelmed by the number of icons you can move around and by the interface's potential. Oh my God, we are gods. We can do almost anything. One day we'll cure cancer by moving icons. One day we'll cure depression, because that's a reductionist, materialist explanation. It's chemical voltages, and when depression is identical to a series of chemical voltages that we can manipulate and cure. And the feeling of potential and power and awe and overwhelm is real. Then you go and practice. And you realize that we don't know shit. Not only do we not know shit, we are causing harm because we take our manipulation of the desktop to a extreme. We treat our patient as a reductionist, materialist set of atoms and molecules that we can move around, that we can throw chemicals at, that we can cut things out of and put things back into and transplant and move. And look, to a degree it works, but when it doesn't work, it's spectacular. Chronic pain, depression, cancer. These kind of things are just the tip of the iceberg of the shit that we fucking suck at. Anxiety. Why? Because we don't understand the nature of reality. We don't understand the source code that makes us what we are, which is experience and consciousness interacting with itself. And until we learn to manipulate that source code, we will not solve the biggest problems in medicine. And that's why this stuff matters. Because once we figure out a science of consciousness, we can apply that to actually hacking the very source code of our experience in this now moment. And at that point, I suspect we'll wake up and the game will be reset because we've won, right? So maybe we should take our time doing that if we care about our kids and our parents still existing. Academy of Immortality says our technology is built by nutty people and nutty results. Well, it's built by humans who imagine that they are what they are. Separate self. G-Man 64, with a fully developed consciousness, we would know everything and have no fear, have unconditional love for everyone and everything. What a wonderful state. So Tom Heinemer and I were talking about this, G-Man, just yesterday. I've had transient states of that. Unity experience, infinite love, infinite connection, all one, undying, eternal, transient. And they're blissful states. Bliss floods into you. Love floods into you. And yet, and whether this is because of conditioning or the thing that I mentioned where we really evolved successfully as an idea, concept, mind system network, to reject that, to manifest in the real world, to have experience as a human. The way to think about it is this. Imagine that understanding of who you really are embodied through this uniquely human manifest experience that we've chosen to have as unlimited consciousness. Imagine what we could bring to this experience. There'll still be pain, there will still be anger, there'll still be emotions, but they will be seen as these beautiful variations in a perfect field of awareness, and we will live our lives embodied in the best possible way we can. We'll make mistakes and we'll celebrate them. We'll love people unconditionally and then hate them unconditionally and then recognize it and love them again. We will experience everything that being a human being has to offer turned up to 1,000. And that is humanity actualized, I think. We'll recognize that everything around us is alive, is consciousness. And that will change everything. And then we will live this human life fully actualized. That's really what it's about. It's not about leaving our humanness behind. It's about fully inhabiting what it means to be human with the knowledge of what you really are. That's powerful shit, man. Risa Doobie, is it possible to truly appreciate a blissful state without another state to compare it to? If that is all you felt, you wouldn't understand how wonderful it really is. In a way, I feel like that's what we do as conscious awareness. We create these variations in our field of infinity to experience a finite experience, to experience color and local romantic love, to experience anger, hunger, want, and desire. You have to differentiate it from unlimited infinite bliss. And that's why we manifest in this world. You know, it's kind of like a way to look at it is this language is religious language, which I don't like, but it's God experiencing a human life. It's, we're spiritual creatures experiencing a human life. We're not human creatures experiencing a spiritual experience. Paula Patterson, Z-Dog, I don't know what was in your meditation this morning, but you're on fire. So, Paula, this is the interesting thing about meditation. It opens your experience to these ideas. And that's why people who don't meditate or people who've never had psychedelic experiences or have never had mystical experiences or whatever peak experiences will look at this kind of line of reasoning as crazy talk. And that's okay, because I was you. I would have looked at this and been like, who the fuck is this bald Deepak Chopra? Fuck this guy. On a Sunday, no less, when I'm supposed to be in my fake-ass church reciting my fake-ass dogma. I always have to get in a dig at dogma because I hate dogma. Heather Hill, I personally not very religious because I believe organized religion to be an evil within itself, but I do know that God does in fact exist. Okay, listen to me carefully, Heather Hill. I was a hardcore atheist, but even in my hardcore atheism, I always knew that there was something going on. There's something behind reality that is not just material reality. It was always like, how Neo was uncomfortable in the Matrix. He saw cracks, he saw holes, he felt intuitively uncomfortable. Organized religion seemed retarded to me because, and again, I'm using the R word just because it feels right here. No offense to anyone with intellectual disability or the parents thereof. It felt dumb to me because it was dogma written by humans. And I don't believe in supernatural shit. So, but yet there was this tug of an undertow of what's really going on. So the hardcore dogmatic atheists deny anything exists and are hardcore materialists, and fuck them. They're wrong. They're just wrong. So, and they're as dogmatic as any religious group. So I have in recent years opened my mind to the core perennial philosophy within religion without any of the dogma. And I think Sam Harris and these sort of new atheists feel similarly. Maybe not Richard Dawkins. He's kind of a materialist. He's never meditated. He's never done psychedelics. He has no idea of that realm of awareness that can exist. So getting back to the point, meditation opens your mind to these things. It really can. Let's see. Moni Fox, yes, The Matrix was so symbolic of our plight. Oh, The Matrix as a movie, and I've said this before, when I first saw it, by the way, I'm just shocked that 94 people are watching me ramble about this stuff. It's so encouraging to me. It really fills me with joy that you guys are willing to have this conversation on a Sunday morning. Thank you. Because this is the stuff that I think about that I feel is so important to our practice and to everything else. And that you would join me on this is really, really, really makes me feel a sense of joy. That's the best word for it, is joy. The Matrix. So when I saw The Matrix in 1999, there was something about it. I wasn't expecting it. I never saw I just saw the trailer of people floating around fighting bullets, and I'm like, oh, it's some sci-fi garbage. Let's watch it. It seems real popular. And I saw it, and I came out of the theater just like I'd had some kind of religious experience. For the first time, I felt like, oh, someone put into a movie what I've always felt about reality, that there's some deeper truth that we don't understand, and we see the cracks everywhere, right? The deja vu, the glitch in the Matrix, and yet we can't understand it. And I watched that movie recently again with my kids, and I tell you, it's like an ecstatic experience watching it because it's entertaining and it's got cool special effects that still hold up. And look, that's all great. And Keanu Reeves is hilarious. But there are things that Morpheus says, that are so on point in terms of any sort of meditative path. Like he says, Neo, it's one thing to know the path. It's another thing to walk it. So it's one thing for me to tell you these things conceptually. It's another thing to actually experience them and intuit them and feel them as a living truth. And that's so true. And the scene in the end, and there's spoilers here for anyone who hasn't seen The Matrix, which is crazy. The scene in the end, I was watching with my family just the other day, where Neo dies. He's shot by Agent Smith. And the love of Trinity, the prophecy of the love of Trinity, wakes him up, brings him back. That love, which is infinite connection and understanding of the one eternal consciousness that is everything that you are. He rises up again in the Matrix, in this world of form, as an enlightened being, as someone who sees it for what it is, which is color and form and emotion and perception arising minute to minute. And the things that are there to try to hurt him, that would cause him suffering, these agents, they come at him shooting a ton of bullets. And he just looks around, turns to them, and goes, no. And the bullets come and freeze and fall out of the air. And that is the nature of the truth on offer in one scene. And you know what was interesting is when I saw that scene and the music is swelling and it's this thing and my kids are around, I actually had a transient, non-dual, I am everything experience. Transiently, where I felt I was this infinite awareness, infinite love, infinite possibility, infinite connection, undying, eternal. That's a great piece of art that can trigger that response, that feeling of veracity, that feeling of this is true, right? This is not, it's not a movie. This is not a drug trip. This is not a mystical experience. This is not some meditative illusion. This is reality. Erica Black, wow, I've been listening to you for an hour. That's insane. Okay, listen, guys. So that's a great wake-up call. This was so much fun for me, you guys. Thank you for letting me process this stuff live, because to think about it with you and to get your opinions and thoughts and questions and to go back and forth in this virtual space that we've created here really helps me to better understand these ideas and to think about them and to explore them and to see where I might be wrong and my intuitions might be wrong and my empirical experience in meditation might be wrong, or I need to go down different paths. This is great. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll read a few more comments. I want to thank everybody who's a supporter, a Super PAC supporter on YouTube. We're going to be doing, as that tribe grows bigger, we're going to be doing stuff just for you. Right now, YouTube doesn't allow me to go live just to supporters, but I'm sure they will soon. I will post this up on Facebook too for supporters only, because I think the broader tribe will look at me like I'm crazy. Carrie Bennett says, mind blown. Great analogy with the Matrix, G-Man's 64. G-Man, I want to compliment you on your very, very, very wise thoughts and questions here. You clearly have thought about this stuff. Thank you, Blazing River. Thank you for your comments and questions as well. Mindy Meeks. Oh, man, I missed this. Bummer. I'll watch the playback. Definitely, Mindy, and I'll put it up on Facebook too. And Academy of Immortality, thank you all. Thank you to you. Michelle Ortiz, I've been a nurse for 20 years and follow you on, and Doc Vader. This is such an amazing live chat. I'm so glad, Michelle, because I worry people will think I'm crazy. Erica Black says, this conversation has me relaxed enough to take a good nap. Hell yeah. Thank you, Jason. All right, guys, I love you. Now I'm going to walk awkwardly over to the computer and end the live stream. But first, I realize I forgot my coffee and it's cold. I'm going to drink the whole thing now. Chug, 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 chug.